president said today. He said, look, if we don't get some money to secure that southern border, we're not going to get an appropriation bill signed. At least I'm not. And if the government shuts down, the government shuts down. The Republicans are frightened by such a prospect. Certain of the president's staff apparently is leaking, and they're frightened by such a prospect. And yet I can't think of a single government shutdown that has occurred during a Republican presidency that has had an undue negative influence on the outcome of a succeeding election. You know, the last one in 2013 resulted in the Republicans picking up seats in the House and the Senate, but of course Karl Rove spun that because he hated Ted Cruz at the time. We could have done better, he said. Well, Karl couldn't because Karl and his boss, George W. Bush, lost the House and the Senate, which were Republican when they came into power. In 2006, we lost a lot of good people in that election cycle. But again, let's step back and look at this a little differently than what you're hearing on TV and radio. Is it not important to secure the southern border? For 1,000 reasons. Law enforcement, national security, economic. Yes. Well, if you're president of the United States and you campaigned on it, you were elected by the American people for, among other reasons, to secure it, and the Democrats in Congress don't want to secure it. In fact, they want the opposite. They want open borders to ensure that they have a permanent majority as far as the eye can see. And then you have Republicans in Congress, again, who accommodate the Democrats by trying to demonstrate that they're not the horrible people that the media say they are. Some of them have tough districts. And some of them just lie through their teeth, telling you what you want to hear in an election, and then they go to Washington and reverse course. Must a president tolerate that? Now, Ronald Reagan shut down the government 6 times. He won 2 massive landslide victories, popular vote and electoral college vote. Sometimes you have to do what's right. But it's even more than that, ladies and gentlemen. The debt is out of control. Under a Republican administration and a Republican Congress, the debt is out of control. That budget that was signed was the worst spending bill in American history. They applauded each other. They patted each other on the back. The president did it because he wanted to fund the military. And he's tried to claw some of it back. But McConnell won't allow it. Paul Ryan won't allow it. But it's intolerable. Now, why is it intolerable? Because you talk about a government shutdown, you'll have a shutdown, all right, and we'll never recover from it. Wrote a whole book on this called Plunder and Deceit. You young people listening to this program are younger people. This will destroy your future no matter what school you went to, no matter what your grades are, no matter how much you work, how much you save, no matter how responsible you are. What's going to happen is the financial state of the federal government will pull everything down. The currency, savings, pension, everything. And when that happens, you'll also see a significant change in our form of government. You already saw it in the Depression with the New Deal and in the Great Society. You'll see more and more of a police state, more and more centralized power, and, of course, the individual will become more and more irrelevant. That's what happens. And now we have a debt that is so massive, our fiscal operating debt is now over $21 trillion. It's bigger than the GDP, which is about $18 trillion now. And unfunded liabilities, all the entitlement programs and the rest, are now over $230 trillion. Are you aware that when the federal government puts together its balance sheet, it doesn't put the unfunded liabilities on it? Now, when you put together your balance sheet, if you have unfunded liabilities like a mortgage or whatever, you are required to, or when a business does, it's required to, but the federal government specifically does not. So you don't really know the true financial state of the federal government. And the true financial state is horrific. Horrific. And so even if we have a government shutdown, we're on a long road to correcting this. And in the meantime, we have a party which is embracing democratic socialism, or at least more and more so, and a media that celebrates it. Now, democratic socialism, there are no democratic socialist regimes. The more socialist, the less democratic. That's the whole point. Socialism is about government control, government bureaucracy, redistribution of wealth. A study was done of this, all will come together. A study was done of Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All proposal. Medicare for all, he says. And the study from the reputable, highly reputable Mercatus Center at George Mason University in Virginia said that the Bernie Sanders Medicare for All proposal would cost, in addition to all the other expenses of the federal government, $32.6 trillion over 10 years. Over $3 trillion a year for the next 10 years. Our federal budget right now is slightly over $4 trillion. He's insane. The left are insane. Absolutely insane. It would destroy our healthcare system. It would destroy our economy and eventually destroy our form of government. There's no constitutional basis for any of this. None. And, of course, none of that is in any of the articles because nobody cares about the Constitution anymore. But the spending would be absolutely enormous, uncontrollable. This is before we get to free college. You can only imagine what that would cost. So if you want to destroy your country, if you want to destroy your way of life, you vote for these people like Bernie Sanders or the 28-year-old moron in New York. So this is what the left is pushing. And yet it's the Republicans in the last appropriation bill, omnibus bill, that passed the greatest spending bill, not just in American history, in human history. And we're supposed to be worried about a government shutdown. Now, they tell us that essential personnel will still have to work. So it's a government shutdown with non-essential personnel temporarily staying home. Afterwards, they get paid anyway. Now, this is the kind of discussion I have with you that they typically do not have on my local home station in Washington because of all the government workers. But what I have found is a lot of government workers agree with me. A lot of them agree with me. The government is going to shut down, the economy is going to shut down if we do not get control over this debt. And if we do not get control over the government. And this leads me to the next topic. You notice I am not going on websites and just pulling issues off and doing my Las Vegas Lounge Act. I leave that to other people. To my great consternation, I will not mention the individuals because I work for Fox, and there's a lot of wonderful people there. I was watching the network the other night, and the issue of Convention of States in Article 5 came up. And our buddy Mark Meckler was on, and he did an outstanding job. But he was interrupted constantly by two individuals who claim to be conservatives, who know nothing about Article 5 and Convention of States, who've read nothing about it, and yet who trashed it left and right. And all one of them could say is, well, I don't believe Mike Lee supports it. Well, I don't believe he supports it either. I love Mike Lee, but he happens to be wrong about this, in my humble opinion. But having written a book on this subject, the book on this subject, and having studied it very, very carefully, I'm appalled when there are people attacking this who don't even know what they're talking about and have no alternative whatsoever. How can you claim to be a constitutionalist when you take a piece of the Constitution and reject it completely? How can you claim to be a federalist, somebody who believes in federalism and the 10th Amendment, when you really don't? And what's the solution? More elections and more judges. That's not a solution. It's barely a temporary fix. How many more Republicans are we going to send to Congress who vote for the biggest spending bill in human history, who refuse to secure the border? And 10 other, 15 other major issues. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.